Welcome to the Radiant Energy Summit, where you'll learn the top insights and strategies for nurturing and optimizing your energy on all levels of your being. Our guest today is Carol Look. Carol's an author, speaker, coach, and creator of her signature coaching method, the Yes Code. Carol is a founding EFT master and combines her traditional psychotherapy training with advanced applications of EFT for unprecedented results with her coaching clients. Known for her laser-like focus and intuitive clarity, Carol offers coaching programs to help clients release their limiting beliefs and emotional conflicts about success so they can reach their maximum potential. Carol has taught workshops across the world. She is regularly featured as an energy medicine expert on leading summits and has been a guest faculty member at Kripalu, Omega, the ASEP Conference, and the Open Center. Welcome to our summit today, Carol.
Hey, Paul. Thank you so much for including me.
You are so welcome. Just being around you, I've always felt like uplifted ever since the first time I ever met you in the early 2000s. So I'm excited about our interview today.
Oh, great.
So let's start off with, what is energy to you? What does it mean to you?
Energy is what animates us. It's what moves us. It's what everything is made of in the world. So we always seem to separate matter from energy, but matter is energy too. So energy is in our thoughts and our beliefs and in the computer in front of you and in the telephone and in the water you drink and the food you eat. So really, energy informs everything in our lives.
And in terms of the kind of work you do, you must see some amazing shifts when it comes to people's energy. So maybe start off with like a little story, and then let's get to your story. So let's talk about like, what's one of the coolest breakthroughs you've ever seen a person make where their energy was like not so good? You know, like they came to you and you could hear it in their voice. You do probably most of your sessions over the phone, although you've done a lot of stuff in person.
A lot in person. What I would say is, let's take a guilt one, where a woman came up to the stage and her energy was low and she was sad and she was crying, and I was doing an explanation about why guilt blocks our success. Because if you feel guilty, you often feel compelled to put a lid on yourself. It kind of levels the playing field in your life. So if you feel guilty about anything. So I said to the participants, what's your guilt? And she said hers was on a scale of 0 to 10, hers was a 10. And I said, how long ago was it? And she said 20 years. And I used that as a good lesson for the audience, saying people are walking around with an old guilt or resentment or hurt or betrayal from 20 years ago, and they wonder why they're not in touch with radiant energy. We all have them. We all grew up, right? We all grew up in families. We all had first bosses. We all had relationships. So basically what we did is we tapped on, she had felt guilty about her son's death. And of course, it had nothing to do with her. It was not her fault. He fell ill. And the entire room was different with her radiant energy. She was able to let it go. At first, she said, I feel guilty about even letting go of my guilt. And everybody understood that, right? She didn't feel like she should forgive herself, but she hadn't done anything wrong. But she was carrying around this burden. So anyway, to make a long story short, everything changed. Her face looked different. Her voice was different. Her eyes were different. And all the energy around her, even if you don't think you see it, you could feel the energy around her was different, because she was able to let go of this assumption that she was guilty, not a good enough mother, didn't help him enough, didn't do enough. And when that was released, because it was just a belief, it wasn't a fact, when that was released with the tapping, with the EFT, everything changed. And including, then of course, it was contagious for other people in the room.
That's cool. So I'm going to put a little bookmark on some of that story with limiting beliefs and draining beliefs, and I'll come back to that in just a second. So let's talk a little bit about you for a moment. What setback in your life pushed you into the kind of work you do today? In other words, what's that thing that knocked you flat on your fanny, that woke you up and just said, okay, I'm doing this kind of work. Let's step back. You might not have known that it was the work you were going to do, because that's often what we hear from people is, I had no idea it was going to turn into what I do today. But what's the thing that pushed you back so far that it woke you up to a new you?
Well, it's interesting. I would say, there were a couple of stories I could use. I would say the realization of how unhappy I was in corporate. And we took a trip to see family members who were living in Africa. And on Christmas Day, instead of doing the gift thing that we usually do, we were seeing lions and trees and taking a safari with my brother-in-law and my sister and being in another culture and just being with nature. And I came home and gave my notice a couple of months later from corporate and went back to school to get my degree, to get my master's degree so that I could become a psychotherapist.
Yeah.
So that was one of them. And it's not that I didn't know I was unhappy, but I was sort of on a program. Oh, I should go into corporate. That would be fun. And I could pay my rent. And oh, that's interesting. I wasn't connected to me. And sometimes we connect to ourselves when we're really unhappy. Is the light that shines on our internal being and says, you know what, this is not for you. And so that's what started that process. And then so many things changed along the road of being a psychotherapist, and then using hypnosis and using tapping with the meridians. So many things changed along the way, but that was the aha that you would think I would have gotten earlier, but I didn't.
Yeah. So, I'm real keen on taking notes in every one of these interviews that I do, because I just learned so much. And so I'm also doing it like vicariously. So those of you that are listening, if you heard Carol say the phrase, I wasn't connected to me, that's one of those inflection points. And that's why we ask these questions of these masters and these great speakers, because we can vicariously learn from their experience. And it's honestly, and Carol, I so believe this, and I know you've had this experience in your own life, it shortens our journey. Why go it the hard way when you can go the simpler route?
Right.
So we stand on the shoulders of giants is the principle here. And so that energy, that intent you just shared is, I wasn't connected to me. Tell us a little bit more about that. Like, what did that feel like? And ...
I would say it felt like going through the motions, and I was good at what I do. It was fine. I did the work. It was fine. I had great friends. I had great family. There wasn't anything. That's what happens. It wasn't a trauma or a drama or an enormous thing like a car accident that wakes somebody up. It was like a slow boil. Like, I'm really not happy. I'm really not reaching into the essence of who I am and what I want to do. So that's confusing for people, because they could say, oh, my life is fine. My life is going okay. There's nothing dramatically wrong. And that's why you really have to wake up. And that's, again, I was in another country, on another continent, doing things that I don't usually do, and connecting to nature and really feeling that something was missing. And what happens is, when we feel something is missing in a relationship, in a job, in a home, we often say, be quiet, be quiet. I don't want to hear that. That's why people could be in a relationship that's not really very good for a long time.
Yeah.
So again, I think it's really important to remind people it can be quite subtle. Nobody would have looked at me and said, whoa, Carol, you're so miserable in corporate. Why don't you leave? That was not what anybody around me would have said.
Yeah. There's a song by Pink Floyd called Comfortably Numb, and I'm thinking of it right now. And for some reason, it's just kind of resonating. I don't know if you remember some of the lines of the song, but there is no pain in receiving. There's a distant light on the horizon. And some of us have become comfortably numb to our truth, our knowing, our light, comfortably numb to the way things are. And that's what you were alluding to before, that, it's not like things were bad, Paul. It's like things were just like not kind of right, though. There was something in you, like a little, we talked about in another conversation you and I had about not the lights in the dashboard, but the different levels. So maybe you can touch on that now. Like, what are the levels of those messages that the body and the mind are sending that sometimes we're not hearing?
So first I have to say that while I don't remember that song, Pink Floyd in the last 2 years has become a joke that it's a message from the universe to me, that the universe knows that I'm listening to the universe, and that I'm listening and they are listening, and I'm listening and they're listening. Okay, so I just want you to know that you mentioning Pink Floyd is hilarious to me right now. Just so you know, and just so the listeners, in case they think whatever you believe out there and the other side is not communicating, the other side is communicating. So
well, let me interrupt for 5 seconds, because here's some of the line. This is why it's such a significant song. And if you ever want to see something magical, let's say you've heard the song. Let's say you have The Wall, and that's the album that it was on. But then you hear, or you Google Van Morrison singing the song, because he got invited on their tour, which is magical, because anybody that knows Van Morrison's voice is like, he's cool. So there he is behind the wall, and he's singing it, and they're slowly disassembling the wall, and you realize that's the voice. Oh my God, it's Van Morrison. He's saying, there is no pain, you are receding. A distant ship smoke on the horizon. You are only coming through in waves. Your lips move, but I can't hear what you're saying. When I was a child, I had a fever, and it continues, and it's so moving because it's like, how many of us have not felt numb at some point? Like, oh my God, this is
right.
I don't even know who I am anymore.
Right. And so that song means when you say the words, that means something to me, but that's not what I was talking about.
Yeah.
I really want to make it clear that
Yes.
how funny it is that you sang Pink Floyd and doing anything. Now, the song about addiction, it's not about addiction. However, being numb, my first job when I got out of school was in an addiction agency. So people came in and they were drinking, and people came in and they were smoking, and people came in and they were overweight and drinking and using drugs and smoking. And that's what we do to not hear the bright light. Let's go there. To not hear the radiance. We do anything. We work too hard, right?
Yeah.
We work too hard. We eat. We get involved in something that doesn't feel truly connected, or it's time consuming and distracting. I could do a 3-day workshop on distractions, right? How we get distracted, what we do, but taking down that wall brick by brick, it's very, very difficult.
Yeah.
It's very, very difficult. I had to leave corporate and say, how am I going to pay for graduate school in New York City and live? I had to get a loan from a family friend. And it was a big deal to ask, and because my family didn't have the money to do it. And you work things out when you're supposed to work things out. And as a result, of course, I have done loans and scholarships to people my whole life because I couldn't have changed courses. I couldn't have changed paths without this incredible woman who is 91 years old, still in my life, who gave me a loan back then.
Wow.
Right? So energy's moving, I'm figuring things out, I go to school, I come out and do a job, and then I go into private practice, which is what I really wanted to do. I didn't want to work in an agency. I learned tremendous things from working with addiction and families and all of that happened there, but I really wanted to have my own private practice, be an entrepreneur, do what I wanted to do without 3 layers of bosses above me. Because even though you're working in an agency as a psychotherapist, you still have levels of bosses. Just right. So you know, everybody.
Yes, yes.
And then I learned the tapping. Partway into that agency, and the rest, as they say, is history. Because the tapping connects. When you said, "How do you connect the dots?" The tapping connects the dots of body, mind, spirit in a way that even talk therapy doesn't.
Yes.
That even someone who's a spiritual counselor can help someone. There's something about inviting the meridian system, which is what we're doing when we're tapping. We're tapping on the connections of energy. We're tapping on the circuits of meridians that carry energy through the body. We're doing body, mind, and spirit and things come together, and you can start to identify and release anything that's in your way from being radiant, from being at your best, from really, truly being your essence, being your best you. So when tapping came into it, loved psychotherapy, loved hypnosis. I was a hypnotist for a while. I would say I was pretty good at it, not great at all. And when I discovered EFT as a tool, tapping as a tool, that's my tool. That seems to be the best one in my hands. And I really can still help people. And I say to people, if I find a better tool, I'll let you know. But as far as moving energy in the body, releasing, clearing, and healing, I don't know other tools that are better. I love Qigong. I love meditation. I love stillness. I love exercise. I love going to the chiropractor. I love lots of things. But as a tool to really heal all those old, heavy, dense energies that hold you back, I really have found it profound, still find it profound 20 something years later.
Okay. So let's start talking more about it. So let's talk about meridians and EFT and tapping as a technique to help people access their radiance. The word master is unfortunately, it's kind of thrown around these days. And, master appears at the end of your name. And when I first met you, you already were an EFT master. And so I don't throw that out there as just like she's just a master. I think master is something where you gain mastery over that 10,000 hour principle and then some. So you're way past that.
Yes, the original title was because we were trained under Gary Craig, who created EFT as the tool. So what we're doing is tapping on acupuncture points. So anybody who's ever been to an acupuncturist, they put needles in this meridian, this point. we tap on the points and really heal the entire system by clearing blockages. So Chinese medicine believes that if you have a symptom, you have a blockage in one of your organs or one of your meridians or an area of your body. So we're clearing blockages, but we're mostly using the emotional blockages. And we're doing an overhaul. So instead of saying, oh, Paul, you have anxiety, that must be in your stomach area or your stomach meridian, we do the whole series. So we're tapping on the bladder meridian point. We're tapping on the stomach meridian point. We're tapping on the central vessel. We're tapping on the governing. We're tapping everything. Yes. And it takes, seconds. And what we're doing is really optimizing your energy. You said that in the beginning, that word optimize. You can't be tuning in to optimal energy and radiant health and radiant energy when you feel resentful at your boss for what he or she did 4 years ago. You can't feel radiant when you still feel insecure around relationships. You're not going to feel radiant and at your best and really, really top energy when you're hurt because of something that someone said 10 years ago. And that's what we all carry around. So part of the process is identifying what's holding you back, what's slowing you down, and then we address it with the tapping on the meridians, and using statements that really include an accepting statement, because that's where the resistance is I shouldn't be this, I shouldn't have this feeling, I shouldn't be this way, I wish I didn't have. We try to use acceptance. It's really combining ancient Chinese medicine with modern psychology. So we release the resistance, we say, I accept myself anyway, and then we tap on the points while we've opened the file. So I say to people, it's like opening a file. You can't edit your file of resentment unless it's open. So by talking about it and tapping and bringing it up in your mind, we are opening that file so we can edit it. And what the process actually does is calms down your fight or flight response in the brain. So if you're afraid of driving, we bring up the file and tap and calm down the paired association between driving and fear. If you're worried that success is going to make you a target for other people, we have you focus on that target, bring it up in your system, and tap and bring down the fear and the associative memories where maybe you got hurt or you were a target. And that's how you move forward. That's how you start to release all these old things. And of course, we do trauma and post-traumatic stress disorder and pain, all these other pretty complicated, intricate issues in our body, mind, and spirit.
Wonderful. So for a person, let's say they haven't tried EFT or tapping before. Let's say they have tried it and got a little jaded. Like, I'll even admit to that. And so I kind of stepped back from it for a while. And yet, I was guided back to it, and that's a whole separate story. So how do you, aside from it's about the acupuncture meridians, etc., you were getting really, really close to, like, grabbing my attention of, it's like a rebalancing. It's like it's like going in for a chiropractic for your entire energy system, and all of a sudden, just like one or two releases, and you're back to normal. I mean, it's almost that simple. In the hands of someone like yourself, if you hear the story, because that's another note that I just took. What are the stories that we tell others and we tell ourselves? And therein lies the symptoms. Like, that's the access to those hidden files that you were talking about. So maybe if you can delve a little bit more into that, like, okay, so here's the template. It's a set of tapping points across, the face and the shoulders and the easy to access spots, so that, and you fill in the blank.
Well, I would say that the bringing up of the file of the target is what's so important. You need to be in it, right? You need to be focused on what is disturbing your energy in order to clear it. So sometimes people will say, that really didn't work for me. And I say, well, what was your target? And they say, what do you mean? Well, then I know they learned it at a cocktail party on a napkin. Someone tried to teach them and they don't know what they're doing. So tapping works. Tapping on acupuncture works. And now finally so exciting. All the research is finally coming out, 20 years later, all the research is coming out. So that's kind of fun to support it. We all knew it worked, but all the research is really building up. So what we're doing is bringing up what distresses you in your electrical energetic system and tapping on the points calms you down and allows you to reframe it, allows you to accept it. I'll give a good example. I was in New York for 9/11, and I saw someone a couple of weeks afterwards. She came to me because she was having nightmares and she could not let it go. And so she came in and we tapped on the trauma. She was in one of the buildings and was able to escape with all her coworkers to the next building and then get down the stairs and get outside. Everybody listening can imagine the trauma of that. And we did tapping on her nightmares, but tapping on the scene. I had her go through each scene. And she said, "That's really weird. Now I can see it." And I said, "Excuse me, what are you talking about?" She said, "Before I could only hear everything.
Wow.
I could hear people yelling. I could hear me jangling the keys. I could hear the footsteps." I said, "I don't know what you're talking about." She said, "I could never put it together, but now I hear and see it."
Yeah.
And that was a good example of how trauma, if you've had a car accident, if you've had any trauma in your life, gets separated into little files in our brain.
Yes.
So you might remember the car accident, the screeching brakes, and then we do tapping and you say, "Oh my gosh, now I can see the face of the other driver and I know he's the one who didn't put his blinker on. Oh, I've got a capsule of resentment about that." Or you go to the doctor, they fix the pain, they do something about your pain, they do an operation, and then as that eases, you say, "You know what? I actually feel really guilty because I'm the one who hurt the person," etc. You can hear where I'm going with this.
Yes.
It's layers. We are layered. It is layered. And when we start to release one feeling, the next one is available to us. And that's what repression and suppression is, right? We don't want to go there. I had a client write me and she said, "I'm not afraid to go there." And I said, "Great, go there," right? But most people are afraid to go there. So they say, "Paul, oh no, I never get hurt. No, I never get hurt." And you think, "Uh-oh, that's not good." And the next person says, "No, I came from a family, we never get angry." I think, "Uh-oh." But you want the range, you want all 8, you want all the octaves.
Yes.
You want to be able to play all the octaves.
Right.
So what we do with the tapping is access. That's really the word. We access your energy where it is. So someone comes into me and says, "I keep procrastinating because I'm afraid of failure." Why are you afraid to fail? What are you worried about? Because I know they're going to criticize me. When did that happen before in your life? Oh my gosh. And 10 incidents come up where they remember being truly harshly criticized. And that's why they're playing under the radar, right? That's why they're playing small. So we go tap, tap, tap on each incident or a few of them. And then they start to say, "Well, so what? I don't care if someone criticizes me." Because they're not so vulnerable. Their energy system isn't so vulnerable and freaked out about being criticized. And that's how behavior changes.
Yeah. And with the next question we're going to ask, I'll lead into that with this quick little adage, and that is, you know that you're clear of something when you get triggered by when the same old triggers don't bring up the same old feelings, and that's like magic, and that's a litmus test, to tell us like, oh my goodness, I'm free of this.
Right.
And it's not only possible, you and I have experienced this not just for ourselves, but for hundreds of clients that we've worked with over the years. So that brings up the next question. What's the connection between our radiant energy and emotional clearing?
Can you imagine being truly radiant if you feel gloomy about your prospects at work? Right? Can you imagine feeling radiant if you're still mad? Someone came to me and they said they're still mad at their mother. And I said, "Oh, and what did she do?" "Oh, no, she's been dead for 10 years. Oh, okay. Well, you totally understand that people can have feelings about people who are deceased. But if you do, you're carrying that around. So it's this idea of lightness, releasing, emotional clearing. And again, so many people don't even know what they're carrying. They don't know. Now, you might be able to see it, or some of your other speakers see it in how someone's posture is, what their voice is like. I can tell by how they talk. I can tell by what they say to me. They can say something to me and I say, "Oh, that's guilt." And they say, "How did you know?" I said, I don't know, 25 years of being a psychotherapist. I can hear what goes on in the patterns.
Yes.
Energy is a pattern. Patterns are full of energy. So when we emotionally clear something that's blocking one of our meridians or the entire meridian system, right, then we can feel free. And when you feel free, you feel radiant. When you feel radiant, you feel high and you feel happier and you feel more joyful and you have more room and space to be present with yourself, with other people. When I was working in corporate, I wasn't present. I was just checking off the box. I was just doing what I needed to do. I didn't even know I wasn't present. Our history carries energy, and energy is full of patterns, and our patterns of behavior are full of energy and emotion. When we can do emotional clearing on our histories, what's going on, it's like clearing your history on your computer, right? What files do we have going on about resentment, hurt, betrayal, guilt, fear? So much fear and anxiety in our world, Paul. So much going on. Little fears. They don't have to be 10 on the scale of 0 to 10. You can have a 5 and a 4 that's operating all the time. And when we clear those, your circuits are cleaner and clearer and smoother. You're happier, you're more satisfied, and you're more present with yourself and with others.
Yeah.
And you're more mindful with yourself and with your others. And you watch your own moods and you watch what other people are going through. And you're able to really feel your feelings without jumping, without reacting, without barking at someone else. So it really has quite an energetic pattern effect on everybody in your life. When you start doing emotional clearing, you're just easier going. When someone else reacts to you, you go, oh, isn't that interesting? They're reacting to me. You don't have to ping pong back.
Right.
If you've cleared your own feelings around that.
Yes. And I'm thinking of David Hawkins' work now that's like kind of coming to me and he's got this, what's called the level of consciousness table. And there's the life enhancing beliefs, anything that is above LOC 200 starts at courage, moves up to things like acceptance and reason and love and peace. And then there's the ineffable stuff, that the really great ones have practiced or live. But the ones that snarl us, the ones that trip us up, the ones that seem to block the energy, those are the life depleting beliefs. That is literal. That literally drains chi, it drains life force from our body. And those are fear, grief, shame, disappointment, etc. And that's, of course, most of your practice where you help people. And that leads into a story that when you and I were talking many years ago, my father had just passed away. This is right around the time that I had met you. And I hired you for a session or two, and you said, okay, what's going on, Paul? And I said, oh man, my company's just like, it hasn't fallen apart, but the wind is out of my sails. You said, oh, interesting. So tell me more. So I did, and you heard the patterns that I wasn't totally aware of. And we did some tapping, and then you said, so tell me what are you really feeling? And I said, I don't know, I'm a good manifester. I teach manifesting classes, etc. And you said, you know what? You're right, Paul. You are a good manifester. You're manifesting the bad stuff, not the good stuff. Are you aware of that? That shifted me. You woke me up when you said that. Mm. Because you helped me discover some unconscious intent. Like, are you clear on what you're focusing on? And the answer was no. If I was, I would have stopped.
Right.
So right. Maybe you can shed a little bit of light on that, because in other words, there are people who are not manifesting what they want right now. Clearly, they're not feeling good. I mean, one of the key questions that I ask people, you want to discover what your real intent is? Look around your life. Look at your relationships, look at your bank account, look at how you're feeling, etc. Look at your home, look at your family, look at your kids. Now, that's not to put too much on the self. It's to say, start noticing. Now, just start journaling that. Where are things imbalanced? Where is that life wheel not turning harmonically? That is to say, one piece at a time. What is drawing my attention?
I would say that word imbalance and that notion is so perfect, because your entire summit is about that. When we're out of balance, then we're not connecting to our own radiance and our radiant energy. We can't be when we're way out of balance in our relationships, in our feelings, in our energy, in our physicality, in our spirituality. And I would say I help people with clarity. That's really the cornerstone of my work, is getting super clear on what are your intentions? What do you want? What are you doing that gets in the way? What are you feeling that gets in the way? Because, as you know, our culture, I think, is obsessed with our behavior, and they forget that our beliefs and our feelings drive our behavior.
Yep.
Everybody try to change your behavior, whatever it is, clear the clutter, start exercising, do this, do that. Well, what about the emotions behind the behavior? Because that's what gets our results. Our emotions trigger our behavior, and then we get results or non-results, or results that we don't like. So we've got to go back to this emotional clearing. And I would say the clarity is what I help people with. And they don't even know they're not clear, right? So many people, they think they're clear. They think they're going about their day with clarity about what they want, how they want to be, what they want to offer people. So clarity is really, really key to understand what's going on in that sequence of beliefs, feelings, behavior, and results. So I think what you said is perfect. Being in balance is what we're looking for, because when we're out of balance in any part of our lives, we are not going to access our radiance, radiant energy. Our chi is going to be low instead of high. So I help people with clarity. It's really about being super clear about your emotions and your behavior and your results. Our culture is a lot of bit obsessed with behavior. And I get to the emotions and the beliefs that trigger the behavior.
Yeah, that's the key. It's the thing that's like hiding underneath the surface that either A, we dare not go to, and yet we understand at a deep level, like, if I could only feel better. Like, if some people might have heard of the wonderful old teacher named Neville, and what Neville talked about is a thing called inner speech. When your inner speech matches your desire, it is inevitable what you will create in life. And the inner speech is not affirmation stuff. The inner speech is you don't even realize what you're saying to yourself sometimes. It's what Gary Craig talks about, the writing on your walls,
Right.
What's in there in that subconscious? Sometimes it might seem overwhelming, but it's not. How am I feeling? Take a nice deep breath. How am I feeling? And if it's a ball of confusion, no problem. Take another nice deep breath. How am I feeling? And after a while, you don't have to ask that question. It's more so, I'm allowing myself to feel. And this is coming from a guy that used to be so left-brained, Carol, so driven, so like, going to my first couple of meditation sessions, when I'd be lying there on the floor with everyone else, they're out. I would look around going, why are all these people so meditative? And they would share their experiences, and they'd be like, oh, balls of light, and imagining, butterflies in the air. And I had none of that. That was about 25 years ago. Now I can stop in the middle of a loud room and I'm like chilled. And that means that anybody can do this with the intent. So as you discussed, that emotions essentially drive our behavior, maybe you can now shed some light on how it's difficult for some of us to detect that like sense of knowing, like, okay, something's under the surface. How do we start detecting it? Let's say your schedule's crowded that day, Carol. We can't get a hold of you. How do we tune in and start accessing that knowing of stillness, of, what if I just held a meridian point? I'm going to think of what Carol talks about. I'm going to take one of those points, because I remember learning this from you and from Gary. If I don't do the whole 5 and 7, how about if I just right in the middle of the subway or right in the middle of work, and I know you and I've talked about this before. What if I just held that karate chop point, closed my eyes, and just thought, peace? And the subconscious says, no, I'm not. No problem. Take a nice deep breath with that and breathe. So maybe you can bring some of those together for a real practical thing that any of us can do. Sit in the middle of work, sit in the middle of a family situation, and and you don't need to tap. Let's do this as practically as possible. Hold a point on the karate chop point. You go. You take it over from there.
I would tap. So sure, you can hold one of the points, but your stress level and you're being triggered in the brain needs real attention. So when you described a particularly difficult situation in a family situation. So if all you did was tap on your stress 5 minutes a day, your life would change within a week. But people are like, oh yeah, they don't do it. They don't do it because there are other issues going on. So the questions are, how do you feel? And people are so running around, they don't spend 3 minutes sitting in a chair saying, I don't know how I feel. It's okay to not know, but you're not even asking the question.
Yeah.
So you have to do that first. How am I feeling? When people come into me and they say, or I do a Skype session, they say, oh, I've been sabotaged. I procrastinated again. And I say, well, what was the upside of procrastinating? They say, don't be silly. I don't want to procrastinate. And I say, I know you don't. So what's the upside? Because it's serving a purpose or you wouldn't do it. And they say, oh, I didn't want to launch my website because I thought that I would be criticized or judged, or I thought I would be successful and I'm afraid of, rocking the boat. So ask yourself a bunch of questions. What am I feeling? If you don't get an emotion, first of all, you need to know what the emotions are. And some people aren't well versed in the emotional language, and that's fine. What am I feeling? What's going on internally? Maybe you don't understand anxiety, but you know that feeling in your stomach when you feel anxious. Maybe you don't understand the stress connection as you're coming home from work, but your back and your neck are always tense when you're coming home. What's that about? So you just need to ask yourself questions. What's the upside of getting in my own way? Someone says, hey, I ate a bag of potato chips. Well, that's one of the easiest ways we block our feelings. Food, drink, smoking, anything that we put inside of ourselves in order not to feel. So if you weren't eating, what would you be feeling? Well, don't be silly. I'm hungry. You're not hungry for an entire bag of potato chips. You can't be, right? So what is the emotion? And it's really about slowing down. What I would say is giving yourself space. We are not giving ourselves space. That's why I do little exercises of stillness. I do exercises of Qigong. I do my own tapping every single day.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's all noise. It's all intrusion. It's all people wanting something from me, and email and phone calls and noise in New York. And so we must give ourselves time to even sit down long enough to put our fingers on the side of the hand point in order to say, hey, I'm tuning in. Hey, how are you? Who are you asking? You're asking yourself, what's going on? I just feel a little odd about that response to the email. You've got to get clarity again. What's going on? It really is about clarity, because when you're not clear, you react or you behave.
Right.
And that's why you want to be clear, so that you behave in a way that has real integrity for you and that really feels like the right thing to say, do, or not do. Sometimes I'm looking at my computer and I'm saying, I wish those people had thought for 2 seconds before they hit the send button, when you're on a group email and people are reacting. It's like, did they think for a few minutes before hitting send? No, they did not, right? So we could all use that. I need it every day.
Yes.
The quiet and the space. So you're talking about space, being able to touch the points, tap on the points, think about the points, but that does no good if you're not emotionally online. This is what happens. Let's go back to the beginning of our conversation about not being tuned in. We're all numb. We're all trying to be numb. We're all afraid not to be numb. And once you get over the fear of all those feelings inside and understand that you can handle any of them. They're not forever. They're for 5 minutes. You can feel any of those emotions. Then you get more comfortable and just say, well, I can do that for 3 minutes.
Right.
I can feel really deep anger, hurt, betrayal, fear for a few minutes. And then you use a technique like tapping on the acupuncture points, and it starts to dissipate. And you think, how did that happen? That's what happened when I was doing hypnosis, Paul. I started it. It overlapped with my training in tapping. So I started offering my hypnosis people tapping instead. And they were like, what? I said, look, I'll give you 5 minutes of tapping. And if you don't like it, I'll give you the 5 minutes at the end of your session so you don't lose anything. And they came back week after week, person after person, saying, what happened last week? What did you do? I didn't do anything. I taught you how to tap on your meridian points. And because when you're a hypnotist, people come to you for smoking, anxiety, and weight loss. So I had a whole bunch of clients in that arena, and they would come back and say, something's different. I can't explain it. Something's different. I'm not reaching for the food. I don't want the cigarettes in the same way, because I allowed them space to feel, hear, and know their emotions, which their emotions were what was driving their behavior.
Yeah. And so now that you're touching on that, my own experience and the discovery that I made was, I would say back in about, in and around the time, I think, in that same period of time when I met you, there was something that came across my stage that it was like an age-old wisdom, and it said that everything negative happens to you with a positive intent. And even if you're speeding through this, if you're driving, you might want to, like turn off somewhere or like take a couple notes and just write that down, because that was a watershed experience in my life. That every negative experience that I ever had in that moment, it suddenly dawned on me, there was a part of me that created those so that I could learn something and find the positive, the gift, the gold, within it, the light, so to speak. So what I'm getting right now is, as people are listening to this, Carol, no matter how busy they might be, as they slow down their intent, as they start listening and they start tuning in, what we're showing on the video now is some of the tapping points. And maybe you can go through some of those. And let's do a couple statements, like, even though I'm too busy to listen to this right now,
Yes.
you know?
Yes.
And in other words, what I was tuning in was the sound of your voice, the intent of your spirit. And I was so in the moment, I was just hearing the stillness, you know?
Wonderful.
And we all have that capacity. And the challenge with listening to a summit like this is there's just too much stuff to listen to sometimes until we actually slow time down with our intent. We just let go.
Well, mark my words, anybody who starts tapping anew, like they've never done it before, and they start tapping, they're going to say, okay, this is weird. What happened? What happened is we're calming down the fight or flight stress response in your brain in response to whatever you think about that's upsetting.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter if it's the traffic jam. It doesn't matter if it's your boss. It doesn't matter if it's your sister, your spouse, the dog, or the kids. It doesn't matter. It's your brain is having a reaction. And, you know, it can be quite severe, like when we worked with the veterans, right, on that special documentary.
Yeah.
It can be post-traumatic stress, or it can be little tiny annoyances that build up. And when you have 10 of them by the end of the day, the pile falls over, right? You're exhausted and you yell at somebody. So, all right, so here's how we would start. So, Paul, you be my echo. So we start by tapping on the side of the hand. So it's on either the left or right. It's below your pinky, above your wrist. Just tap there, and we come up with a statement that feels true. Okay, so let's just say this: even though I have all these feelings swirling around,
Even though I have all these feelings swirling around,
and part of me feels overwhelmed,
and part of me feels overwhelmed,
I deeply and completely love and accept myself anyway.
I deeply and completely love and accept myself anyway.
Let me do it again. Even though it's hard to really feel my feelings,
Even though it's really hard to feel my feelings,
because I'm accustomed to running away from them,
because I'm accustomed to running away from them,
I accept who I am and how I feel.
I accept myself and how I feel.
Then we take 2 fingers of your dominant hand and tap on the first point, is called the eyebrow point. It's above the nose at the beginning of the hair of either eyebrow, not your third eye point, but right at the beginning of an eyebrow, and tap there. And we just name the truth, which in this case, for this target, what we're talking about is, I feel overwhelmed and I can't feel my feelings.
I feel overwhelmed and I can't feel my feelings.
And then on the next point, which is the outside corner of one of your eyes, I feel overwhelmed with too many feelings.
I feel overwhelmed with too many feelings.
The next point is under your eye on a bone right there, and tap and just say, I just want to feel my feelings.
I just want to feel my feelings.
Under the nose, it's right under your nose on your upper lip, tap there. So we're tapping lightly, tap, 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 tap. I feel overwhelmed and stressed out.
I feel overwhelmed and stressed out.
The next point is the chin point, above your chin, below your lower lip. These are all on major meridians on your face and body. Tap right there. I feel so stressed out, I can't get clear.
I feel so stressed out, I can't get clear.
The next point is called your collarbone point. So it's right below your collarbone, below one of those knobs on your chest. If you put your hand in an outstretched palm and you tap where the knot of a man's tie would fall, you're on it, both sides. So go ahead and do that. So you just tap like that right there below your neck on your collarbone points at the bottom there, below that little U and that indentation, and just say, I feel so stressed out.
I feel so stressed out.
The next point, either side, 4 inches below your armpit in your ribs there. I feel stressed out and I didn't even know it.
I feel so stressed out and I didn't even know it.
Then we tap on the top of the head, a beautiful point there called Ba Hui, meeting point of 100 points. Tap there and say, I feel so stressed out and I didn't even know it.
I feel so stressed out and I didn't even know it.
But I accept who I am and how I feel.
But I accept who I am and how I feel.
Good, and then you take a deep breath. So that was less specific than we usually do. We usually take, what's the fear? 0 to 10, the fear's a 7. Okay, tap, 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 I'm afraid of this. That was more a general tapping when someone feels truly overwhelmed and stressed out to the point where they can't get clear. They don't even know what they want to work on. And you saw, I just went logically. Oh, I'm so overwhelmed. I don't even know what I'm feeling. Oh, it feels like stress. Oh, I didn't even know it. I'm just telling a story. I'm just talking, right? Yeah. I'm just saying what is probably going on for you. Then the deep breath at the end, take a deep breath, and you can go around again. Start tapping on your eyebrow again and say, I am stressed out, and now I know what it is. See, as we start to clear the louder vibrations at the top, the ones that are kind of itchy, then we start to get deeper and deeper and say, I know what it is. A friend of mine said something kind of nasty to me, and I need to go back to that conversation or I'm holding on to it. Oh, no, it's about money. Oh, I didn't know that. but you don't know that until you get those very distracting top vibrations lower.
Yeah.
So it's always good to do a tapping round or several rounds on overwhelmed, stressed out, scattered. That's always a great place to start, because we are human beings for the most part, are scattered, and our energy is going in a million directions, and we wonder why we don't feel like we have high chi or radiant energy.
And what I'm getting right now is I remember being back in the moments when I was learning from you and Gary Craig and some of the other EFT great ones. And what happened for me back then was just like a watershed seminal series of moments for me, because I heard Gary Craig talking about the writings on the walls. In other words, on the subconscious, there's like file folders left and right. There's a lot of them. They're almost innumerable. And when I'd start tapping, I remember hearing the statement that Gary would say, tap on anything that's coming across your mind. And I started doing that. I thought, like, what have I got to lose? I mean, why don't I just like suspend my disbelief that it could work, shouldn't work, whatever work. And I would say, okay, like, even though I may not be feeling great about the thing I'm working on right now, even though I have doubts, even though I have suspicions that people may not accept my work, and I'd feel better in like 5 minutes. So what that did, as Rick Gerald calls this, he says it's regenerative trust, he calls it. That the more you start trusting your intuition, the stronger it gets. And that's exactly what happened for me, because then I started hearing this little voice within, and it would say, okay, we're stuck because of this little thing right here. And I'd say, really? Cool, thanks for that. I would tap on it, and I'd be clear in 5 or 10 minutes.
Wonderful.
So what we're touching on now is that the stories that you hear your clients talk about, the clients can't hear themselves talking about as frequently, because it's just too ambient to them. It's like it's become like the water that the fish is in. You ask the fish, how's the water? And the fish goes, what? So our nose is against the window. We can't see our own reflection because we're fogging up the window. That's the new metaphor that's come to me. So like right now, let's thank you for that tapping. And how do we help a person do conversational tapping within their own mind? At first, they may have to start writing it down. Like, how am I feeling? Oh, I'm feeling stressed, the thing with the kids. At least you're writing it down. My number one thing with people is start writing down what's going on in your life. All the stuff that you're upset about, all the stuff that's just not right. Because by doing that, you're going to free your mind, because you can't possibly hold all this stuff in your mind.
Exactly.
The second step is, now that you're aware of a couple of them, circle 1 or 2 that are draining your energy the most. Now do some of this tapping. So
now what I would do is start with, write down, I'm so stressed out because is my favorite word, right?
Yeah.
I'm so stressed out because, and fill in the blank, and you're going to have 10 things there. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I like this.
I wanted to say something else about what you were saying about the fish, not knowing what water looks like. I say to people, if you grow up in France, you speak French. End of story. You grew up in your family. I grew up in my family. We have those feelings and beliefs and our consciousness about the world based on our family history. We can't not, right? We just can't not have it. So ask yourself what you feel about money. Ask yourself what you feel about men, about women, about projects, about success. A lot of times people come in and they don't know that they're feeling unsafe about standing out and being their best. But you have to ask the right questions, like, what's the downside of being successful? Oh, what do you mean? There's no downside. I've wanted to be successful for years. I know you have, but you've sabotaged yourself to an Olympic version. So why are you getting in your own way? Oh, because being successful doesn't feel safe. So it's having a conversation, writing and journaling, or simply saying, I'm stressed out because, and fill in the blank, and then tap on it. What I would say is, don't do conversational tapping first. Do basic tapping 101. Even though I'm afraid of X, fill in the blank, I deeply and completely accept myself. And when you tap on the points, I'm afraid of this. I'm afraid of my meeting with the boss next week. I'm afraid of the meeting with the boss next week. I'm afraid. Just keep repeating it because it's true. The file is opened and you're having the effect of calming down that fight or flight response in your brain when you think of the meeting with your boss next week. So go ahead and be really simple. What happens, as you know, Paul, we try to make it so complicated. Yeah. Oh, please, everybody, just take fear, anxiety, or stress and tap on the points in sequence. while you're thinking about it, while you're talking about it. It's always better to do it out loud because you get so engaged when you're out loud. But of
Yes.
course, I'm in New York and I have people doing it on the subway. They're not going to tap on the subway, so they do it quietly in their own mind, and they get fabulous results.
Right. But you're bringing up something that I remember in the early days of my understandings of EFT, and that was, number one, is feel the feeling. Allow yourself to feel it, because if you go above it, start thinking about the concept of it rather than feeling it, you're not going to get nearly the same results.
You can't, because you're not tuned in. You're not in it. So,
exactly. Right.
And that's why when people are doing trauma relief, I say, could you go to someone, please, for trauma relief instead of trying to do it on yourself? Because the nature of trauma is that we want to avoid those little capsules of feelings and terror and what happened, right? So you need extra help. So you might need to go to someone.
Yeah. And so you're bringing up something that I've seen in almost anybody I've ever worked with, whether it be live or that would be over the phone. And that is, you hear them say it in their own words and it's in their own sentences, but they don't notice the first part of their phrase. I can't wait to get rid of.
Right.
And then we'll slow things down. And because, the kind of people that I kind of attract when I do sessions is a person who's done some work already, not a beginner, who is willing to take responsibility for their words, their intents, their actions, etc. So I asked them, so did you notice how you just said that? Said what? This is cool, because now they're said what? Yeah. Okay. Slow down. Go back to how you said the sentence that you just shared with me. Oh yeah, it was about the problem that I have, this frequent thing with, finances. And what was the preceding phrase? I don't know. In other words, they're not even aware they said it.
Exactly.
And the words were, I want to get rid of. And that's the unconscious intent. That's what creates the resistance that you just talked about. So it's a little too easy sometimes to just say, okay, the principle is X. My name is Carol. I'm good at this blank. Because we are now so busy in our culture that we hear a Carol Look talk or Paul or whoever. We go, yeah, great. That sounds great, but I can't slow down. Mm-hmm. That's intent right there. I'm too busy is an intent statement, in the unconscious. So what do you suggest right now if a person feels too busy to even sit here and like take it in? I'm overwhelmed. Or says, I'm starting to feel better and I want to stay in this zone. Wow, how can I keep this feeling going?
Self-care, 5 to 10 to 15 to 20 minutes a day, self-care. When someone comes, I had a woman come to me with massive migraines, and I gave her homework. I said, could you do tapping 5 to 10 minutes a day? She said, nope, I'm too busy. I said, I don't think you should come see me. Don't waste your money. If someone says to me, I do not have 5 minutes a day to take care of myself, they have too much else going on. They have a secondary gain of not wanting to take care of themselves.
Yeah. And I'm just going to interrupt for 5 seconds. So you know what? There's a positive intent there somewhere. In other words,
absolutely.
They haven't found it.
Yep.
Yes, it's easy to say, I only want clients, that only do X. And at the same time, it's like, you know what? What if right now, Carol, we're shifting the meme of what resistance used to look like and what resistance and procrastination are supposed to be, and it causes internal pain. What if that's a gift of absolute profound nature that we're just starting to scratch the surface of? Resistance is light that's trapped only for a moment. And the moment you are aware of it, something shifts.
So I always say the procrastination or sabotage or getting in your own way, not only is it a wake-up call, but more importantly, it solves a problem. So this was solving a problem for this woman because she didn't want to deal with the real feelings, which then I found out later. But do you think I woke her up by saying that? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right? And she said, oh my gosh, you're right. Oh, that's unbelievable that I just said to you, I don't have 5 minutes in my day. Like, no one's that busy. I'm sorry.
Right.
No one's that busy. So there's always a solution that you're trying to do for yourself. So the person who's 40 pounds overweight, it's solving a problem. Oh, no, it's not. I hate myself. I'm fat. No. It's solving a problem.
Yeah.
The person who does a relationship for 3 months, the next relationship for 2 months, the next relationship for 3 months, but they say, I want to be in a longer term committed relationship. You're solving a problem by getting out at 3 months. I don't know what it is, and you get to tell me what it is. I'm not going to tell you, but you're solving something. So we have to be less critical and less judgmental of ourselves and say, hey, I spent 3 days without taking 10 minutes for stillness. Okay, got it. Okay. Sometimes I get to the end of my day and I haven't done either my stillness or my tapping or whatever. And I say, okay, I'm going to do it anyway because I'm asking other people to do it. And I don't know how the day got away from me, but it did.
Yeah.
And that's okay too. But get to your self-care practices. And again, we're not starting with an hour. We're saying 5 or 10 minutes.
Yes.
5 or 10 minutes, because I know from experience of over 20 years doing the tapping, and tapping and EFT, everybody are interchangeable. 5 or 10 minutes a day, you'll feel so different. You will then be drawn to do it because you'll say, whoa, wow, I'm calmer. My stomach feels better. My head feels better. My relationships are better. I'm not reactive. I'm feeling better able to handle what's going on at work or at home with the kids. Something, you start to shift and you feel it immediately. That's what happens. It doesn't mean you can put a finger on it and really describe it, but you're going to feel different. You're going to feel your energy be different. And you're going to say, okay, something's going on here, rather than just meditation.
Yes.
Rather than just doing something else. It's so profound. When I first did it for a couple months, I saw a friend of mine and I hadn't seen her in ages. And she sat down at lunch and she said, "You're different." I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "I have no idea, but what are you doing?" And I said, "What?" And I had just taken my first class with Fred Gallo to learn how to do the tapping.
Yeah.
And I'd been doing it for 3 months on my clients and telling them, do it for 5 minutes. If you don't like it, I'll give you the time at the end of the session. So I was really practicing with it. And it was so funny because I needed the outside source to say, you're different, you look different, you sound different, something's going on, right?
Yeah. External validation. Yeah.
Always, because I couldn't see it. I was the fish. I was the person speaking French,
Right.
French in France, right?
You know, there's a phrase that you talk about called the leaky bucket. And maybe you can touch on that a little bit about the leaks in our energy, the leaks in our chi.
Yes, go back to the idea of chi being the energy that animates us and life force energy. If we see ourselves as a bucket or a beautiful vase of water, what we're doing is we are springing little tiny leaks everywhere with our emotions, our upsets, our limiting beliefs. And before you know it, the bucket is empty and you don't feel good and you feel tired. And then you reach for food that you know is terrible for you, or you say something to someone you regret. So we want to plug those holes by doing emotional clearing so we feel better about ourselves, no matter what they do out there, right? The focus is so often about other people. It's not about them. It's about you and how you respond and your history. So if you have a history of someone yelling at you a lot, that's how you're going to respond to people who get mad at you. Instead of hearing what they're saying, knowing what's going on, understanding they have their own history. So if we can plug a lot of those leaks, then we bring our energy up to better levels, and then we feel like doing more for ourselves and for others. We feel more generous. We feel more trusting. We understand that it's just feelings rather than the end of the world. So much happens when we build our own chi.
Yeah.
So I do a couple of minutes of Qigong exercises. That's great. And then I do my tapping and my stillness. They're all different. I'm doing some voice work and toning my chakras. I don't care what you do. Spend some time on yourself.
Yes.
Walk in the park. Do your gratitude list. Do what you need to do that says, I'm taking time off from the busy, busy world.
And there would be a tapping statement like, even though I don't take time for myself, I still love and accept myself. Even though I'm not nurturing myself like I know I can. In other words, there's a self-rejecting that's going on there, like John Ruskin talks about, that at some level, if I'm not paying attention to my own self, there is a part of me that I am actually resisting or rejecting. And that sounds like tough medicine, but that's just to be honest with the self. And so
Yes.
even though I'm resisting a part of my own truth, I still love and accept it. Yeah.
But I would go behind that.
Okay.
So instead of saying, even though I'm not taking time for myself, that's true and that's the behavior, why aren't you?
Okay, good.
Right? What's the feeling? What's the upside of ignoring your needs? Well, I don't think I deserve it. Aha. Now we're on something a little juicier, even though I don't think I'm worth taking 10 minutes a day for. It's a little deeper. It's the next layer, right?
Good.
Rather than the behavior.
Yeah, that's good. I just meant start with whatever comes up, like Gary used to teach,
Absolutely.
That gave me access to what you're talking about. Then the
Absolutely.
belief, then I'm kind of like, wow, I'm not taking time for myself. And why is it that I'm not taking time for myself? Oh, because I'm so busy now thinking I have to keep trying harder, push. And that part of me is pretty much it's not gone, but it's not there like it used to be, because my LOC, as in Hawkins speak, the level of consciousness where the energetic used to reside for Paul used to be at LOC 125, which was disappointment. And I was like a student and a master of that level. When I met people like you, it's like, hey, Paul, do you realize that you're kind of like focusing on that? What? Woke me up, step back, let's clear it, because I'm not any different than anyone else in this sense. If you point something out to me that is a clear, and I don't know if I use the word sabotage like you do. I don't believe in sabotage, by the way, because let's just say I'm tripping over myself. I'm unaware of why I'm doing this to myself. That's the way I prefer to say it. Suddenly you help me become aware, the light bulb just turned on.
Right.
Wow, that's magic.
Right. And I would say, well, I did a newsletter on this, stop chasing and start choosing. Because when we live in disappointment or I'm not good enough, you end up chasing.
Oh.
I don't care what you're chasing. You're using 25 techniques. Well, don't use 25 because you're never going to get anywhere. Choose one. I don't care if it's tapping. Well, it doesn't mean anything. It's fine with me if you choose something else. But stop chasing what you think is going to make you better because you're better right now. Oh, no, I'm not. Okay, well, that's where we need to go. I'm not whole yet. Yeah, you actually are whole right now, and that will help your energy, and that will help your chi, and that will help the radiance, and that will help you just accept, I'm cycling back those old feelings that I heard from home that said you're not enough. Why not? Oh, because I had an older brother or sister or somebody who said I wasn't. That's how we follow the thread. The acceptance and being with and embracing what we're feeling is how we follow the thread into where it started, where it's going, what we do out of it, what we're feeling.
Yes, and you just touched on what I went through, and I call it the not enough effect. The part of us that feels like no matter what I've done, it's not hitting that whatever higher level that I thought or other people expected of me, or I wanted more. The wanting more is a failure, is a recipe for failure. It's because it's never satisfied. It's okay to want more, but it's also a wonderful quality to know when more isn't the answer to what you want.
Right, and that brings us to that notion of alignment.
Yes.
If you're here, but you want to be there, and all you do is focus on being there, you lose here and you lose now.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
We want to close that gap and say, okay, sure, I want to go over there. That's fine. But are you present now? Are you talking to the person you're talking to? Are you paying attention? Are you with yourself now, even if there are other people in the room? Are you present now? Because you'll get there, but we're obsessed with getting there, right? I would say our culture tells us, taught me to be obsessed with getting over there. I say to people about the money stuff, because I've done so much work with success and abundance. I say, if you're not in alignment with abundance, I'll give you a check for $1 million and you're going to lose it on the way to the bank. And they go, okay, got it. They get that concept.
Yeah.
You've got to be with it and embrace it and in alignment. And as you said in the beginning, that idea of our self-esteem and self-acceptance, and really being online with who we are and where we are.
Yeah. So what would you say, Carol, are some examples of blockages in our emotional energy that inhibit our radiance?
Things from our past, emotional conflicts from our past, from our present, and about the future. So the past could be, I'm still upset with how the ex treated me about the kids. I don't know, I'm making it up, right? Something in the past that when you think about it, you get a charge on it. So that's an emotional blockage in the past that could drain you, could be one of those holes in the leaky bucket. The present is always fear, right? It's always worry and fear. And what if I don't do this in an hour? And what about this? And this isn't right. And this isn't enough. And my kid got a B-. And whatever's going on right now that you're aware of, can you be aware of it? And then an emotional blockage for the future is always that anticipatory anxiety. Yes, but in a month I'm doing this, and what if I'm not good enough? Yes, but I'm supposed to do this. Yes, but I have to show up here and do a presentation at work. And we are so in the future thinking about it a month from now that actually, you can feel it, see it, and hear it. It gets us offline again.
Yeah.
Right? We need to reboot. Wait a minute. What about right now? And you can get to the feelings right now and say, I feel anxious about the future. That's being present. The truth is, I feel anxious about my future. Awesome. There's a tapping sequence. Even though I'm so anxious about my future, I can't be present. At least I admit that's what's going on.
Mm.
So it's the emotional feeling. What causes the blockage is the leakage. It's siphoning off energy about something that's not going on now. So it's in the past, in the future, or something now that you can't do anything about. You can't do anything about what someone else thinks about you. Oh, yes, but what if she? Well, what if she? What are you going to do about it? Yeah, but wait, maybe he. We have to get out of that head frame that says, I can change what they're saying, what they're, there's a famous expression in AA, what other people think of me is none of my business. Exactly. So the blockages, just to answer your question, the past blockages, everyone has a zillion of them. The more you release, the more free you feel, and the more your radiance and your chi is built up. Then there's the present ones, and then there's the ones about your future.
Wonderful. So, Carol, as we close here, what would you love to share with people that they can take moving forward in their lives relative to the kind of work that you do with tapping, EFT, and intent?
I would say you deserve to validate and honor your emotions. And challenges in your life are because you haven't been given permission to do that, or you were told not to, or you were told it was selfish or that you shouldn't. And when you understand that doing the tapping on your fears and your hurts and your guilts and your resentments, all of that allows you just to embrace your feelings, be in the space, everything changes. You start to feel more confident, more trusting, as we talked about before, and really start to feel in alignment with you. You get that clarity about it's just a feeling and I can handle it. I don't have to fix everything. I don't have to be somebody I'm not. So I always say to people, get the clarity on what you're feeling and what you'd like to do with it and where you'd like to be in your life. So the tapping, again, has just been an extraordinary technique for me and for my clients and for the workshops I teach. Still is. Because we are body, mind, spirit. So we can't cut off and just be our mind. We can't cut off and just be our bodies. You've seen people who only do body work and they don't engage the emotional life. You've seen people who only do energy work and they're not really in this life. We need to do body, mind, and spirit.
Yeah, I completely agree. This is now over 14 years later, 15 years later, and I'm still doing tapping in numbers of different ways, and I've shared it with so many people. So one thing I'm thinking right now is, to kind of close, maybe we want to just place our fingertips on our heart point. It doesn't matter the exact spot. The intent is the key. And so if you've taken the time to listen to this, if you've taken that kind of self-nurturing and Carol's voice resonated with you and her work and her intent, then notice that's something within yourself, that in your heart is the core of who you are. That's where your soul parks itself. And so as you just hold that point, your heart point, Carol, would you like to say something relative to these people in their hearts and their minds?
You're worth it. I'm worth it. You're lovable. You're enough.
Oh, I'm in complete agreement. We've got everything we need on the inside, and as some of the sages have been teaching us, we've been looking in all the wrong places to find the happiness when it's been sitting there the whole time. Yes. If it was any closer, it would bite us right in the nose, right?
Right. Right.
And yet, when we have those moments of stillness, or like, oh my God, I feel better. Who created that? That wasn't something from the outside. No, that was just a little moment you gave yourself. And so, thank you, Carol, for sharing some of those moments with us today. We love your work, and thank you for all that you do and who you are.
Thank you, Paul. Love you.
And we're tapping on that. We love Carol. Tap, tap, tap. Bless you, my friend. Aloha.
Thank you.